Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'll start with the introduction. So, our group includes Alejandro, Livia, Jansu, Shruti, and myself, Sheena. And this is our project, The Urban Sanctuary at Columbia Park. We acknowledge that we're on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. The site is located in the neighborhood of Oak Ridge between Queen Elizabeth Park, the Langara Golf Course, as well as near the Van Dusen Botanical Garden, as Stephanie already introduced. Throughout our site immersion process, we analyzed the existing and future climatic conditions of the site. We looked at the possible heat effect at different areas of the site with the new development upcoming, which informed us that the site was overly exposed to sun, with the south edge being the most heated. We also looked at the existing edge conditions as well as noise levels around the site, along with other multi-sensorial experiences based on the current neighborhood. This led us to realize the big issues of the site. Firstly, there's absolutely no habitat value. There's a complete lack of understory and tree canopy. There's also, as a result of that, there's also a lack of privacy and sense of enclosure. And considering the upcoming redensification, there would be a lack of access to green spaces for the massive number of people who will be living in this area. After figuring out the issues, we went to address the opportunities that the site provides. We looked at the green corridor proposal for Alberta Street and how that makes the site an important node. This gives Columbia Park a lot of potential to become an active natural space, reduce heat island effects, and manage stormwater for the community surrounding it. Some initial resources we referred to were the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Social Indicators Profile for demographic data, the Biodiversity Strategy by Vancouver Boards and Parks of Parks and Recreation, and the Vancouver Bird Strategy to help direct our design. After referring to these, our focus shifted to not just making the site for human recreation, but also creating an ecological balance with nature. This led us to look into bird breeding hotspots in Vancouver and understand the ecological potential of Columbia Park as an intermediate location for varying birds between the primary breeding hotspot, Queen Elizabeth Park, and the secondary breeding hotspot, Langara Golf Course.
Okay, so public parks, especially in urban environments such as Vancouver City, are necessary sanctuaries for local residents. Now, due to urban densification, there's a lack of areas like these and therefore a lack of interaction with nature within the city. We wanted to create an equal access to nature and ecosystem services for all through the design of this inclusive park, a space within the city to interact with biodiversity for people who cannot go outside the city boundaries to experience nature. Our site immersion and research all led to our decision to create an ecological oasis for the diverse population of Oak Ridge by breaking the physical boundaries of the park both horizontally and vertically, while responding to the urban context such that it stitches people with nature. Through this design, we wanted to take the relationship that people share with nature to new heights, quite literally. In span of 6 weeks, we attempted various iterations which helped to shape our final design. So overall, our design developed from the idea of activating Alberta Street and making it an active link in the green corridor, connecting the site edges and adding to the verticality of the park, that is, working on vertical stratification. We also experimented with different hierarchies of pathways that led to the formation of an elevated pathway, a biking pathway, and the shortest route. We designed experiences in sections and perspectives and then came back to the plan and detailed them out further. By this iteration, as you can see, we were able to define spaces much better, add interaction spaces along Alberta Street, and work on the water edges and play spaces. And finally, coming to our site plan, the linearity of Alberta Street was broken and pedestrianized. As a green spill out for cafes for the new development, gather spaces and seating spaces were provided with a view towards different focus areas of the site. This can also be a community gather space for residents living around. The two main pathways are a result of our intention of connecting the edges according to the desire lines, and the interaction in the middle developed a wooden deck for experiencing the water edge. The north side of the park is more open, focusing on human activities like playgrounds, open greens for playing and sitting between meadows. This side has more deciduous trees as well to get the winter sun. On the other hand, the south side is more densely planted to foster ecological relationships and reduce urban heat island effect. The varieties of shrub, trees, and meadow plants help to increase species diversity on site. And the water reservoir in the middle supports bird species as well as responds to the historic stream.
The bike path was designed like an extension to the existing bike pathway around the site, going through Alberta Street and then inside the park for a more immersive experience. Additionally, the elevated pathway was a step towards vertical stratification, starting from a mound that goes up to 6 meters on the southeast corner of the site, with seating along the edges as well as a community hammock. The elevated pathway gives an opportunity for people to see various birds nesting and feeding locations, as well as engaging with various elevated views. The diagram on the right shows the various circulation routes in the park, starting from the shortest route, bicycle pathway, pedestrian pathway, walkable Alberta Street, and then the elevated pathway. This view of the water's edge shows the crisscross pathway over the water reservoir. At the back is the meadow and the stepped mound for people to sit facing the water. We have integrated plants such as native red fresco, cattail, and small fruit bulrush to filter the water as it runs through the park. To select plant species for the park, we analyzed a complex web of species connectivity between birds and insects to determine which plants and trees were necessary to increase the bird population in Columbia Park, with the intention to make the park a bird breeding hotspot. These plants were integrated around the water, in the meadow, and within the forested areas. Within and around the site, we integrated the existing trees with various forest and meadow species to increase the variability of plant heights throughout the site. For our plant palette, we mostly chose native species such as western hemlock, Coosa dogwood, and thimbleberry, with a few various non-native species that were integrated to support bird and insect species. We selected plants that vary in height and density to increase the vertical stratification of the park. The meadow includes plants such as lavender hyssop, butterfly milkweed, and standing cypress, which mainly supports insect and hummingbird species that in turn support the bird species within the park. We also integrated meadow spaces on Alberta Street to brighten the space as well as attract hummingbirds, butterflies, dragonflies, and bees. To select our plant palette, we also investigated the seasonality of trees, shrubs, and ground covers throughout the year. It is noticeable that we tried to integrate both coniferous and deciduous trees so that there is more shade during the summer to alleviate the urban heat island effect and more sun in the winter to warm the space. We also investigated the seasonality of perennials throughout the year. We have integrated flowers that provide different colorful experiences through the spring, summer, and fall. These plants are filled in with various grasses. These 3 diagrams in the bottom represent the site during summer, autumn, and winter, while the sections above show the activities on the water's edge during dry and wet conditions. When the water is low in summers, the area is used for sitting and playing on the rocks, whereas when it's high, the water ends up covering most of the rocks and pushing the activities further from the center.
Now we are looking to Albert Street. The diagrams show how rainwater runoff from the future surrounding buildings can be used for irrigation on Albert Street and can be further be directed to the stream that flows into the site. The pedestrian street, planted with meadow and grasses, is imagined to be an active community space with coffee space out, various seating options along with the space for small gatherings. The section below is a north-south section, so it's through West 42nd and West 44th, looking towards Albert Street. The section cuts through the water reservoir and the elevated pathway. The zoom-in section on the left shows the hammock experience on the elevated walkway, while there is a rich understory on the ground below and large tree foliage above. In the right section, a walking area is designed where the users can see the water on one side and the meadow on the other at the same time. The elevated pathway integrates a multi-level experience of nesting and feeding spots for birds commonly found in this area. While the water is home to bird species such as the wood duck and the northern pintail, the shrubs are chosen for the song sparrow and the house sparrow, and the trees for the yellow warbler and cedar waxwing. The east-west section between Albert Street and Columbia Street is looking towards the west 42nd. The water edge section on the left shows how some large boulders can be fabricated to interrogate seating along the edge. It also shows the beginning of the elevated pathway emerging from a mound. The section on the right is showing the activities on different levels where the raised walkway is close to the water.
The sectional perspective shows varying topography on the site. For the elevated pathway, we have taken advantage of the existing site slope descending towards the southeast to create an accessible elevated experience with less than 5% of the slope. The materials were also chosen keeping in mind permeability, but at the same time, easy movement for all. They range from decomposed granite on pathways to reclaimed wood on the decks and stone for seating elements. This is a view of the playground showing multiple mounds of grass while others of poured in place rubber. The idea was to create a variety of play experiences on, over, and under the mound for children to enjoy while having sitting around the play area for parents to watch their kids. Then, this is the view from the elevated pathway looking north towards the mountain on a snowy winter night. There are various seating options and the area has ample light to create an active and safe evening space. This gives people an opportunity to enjoy the park at different hours of the day. And last but not least, through our physical model, we explored the changing topography, making the model with the new proposed contours help us to really understand the grading of the site, the movement pattern along the raised pathway seating on the sloping side, and tree density. And here is a compilation of the drawings to the urban sanctuary. Thank you all for your time, and we would love to hear your feedback.